Before I start, I just want to mention that the topic of suicide is a sensitive matter. We should approach that with care and compassion. In this discussion, we will try to remain mindful of our language because it's not just about being politically correct, but it's about saving lives. As our knowledge and understanding of suicide evolves, the way we talk about it must also evolve. Throughout the discussion, we will avoid anything that reinforces stereotypes, prejudice, or discrimination against people with mental illness or suicidal behaviors, and we will remain respectful of everyone's religion presented here. We have all of the major religions in Guyana represented at the table. We have Muslim, Christian, and Hindu represented, so we want to remain respectful of everyone's religion. To start the talk, I will introduce Dr. Jaya Kumar. Sorry about that. She is an honorary associate professor of the University of Melbourne, an honorary professor from the University of University, and founder of the SNEHA, a pioneering suicide prevention organization in India. She is head of the Department of Psychiatry, Voluntary Health Services in Chennai, member of the WHO's Network of Suicide Research and Prevention, and the International Academy of Suicide Research, and former vice president of the International Association for Suicide Prevention.
Thank you very much. I think this is a very important topic. Every time we read about suicide, we say religion is a protective factor. But in fact, if you really look at the research, that is the least researched topic. We do not know what in religion is a protective and whether it is equitable across religions, across age group, across countries, we don't know. So the first kind of a macro data which was published by the Dr. Bertolotti in WHO was way back in 1999 or 2000, where he classified the countries according to the majority religion of the country and looked at the suicide rate and found that the maximum suicide rates or the highest suicide rates were in what we call as the atheist countries, the USSR, the former USSR republics and China, followed by the Hindu and the Buddhist countries, followed by Protestant countries, followed by Catholic countries, and the least were found both in the one country of Jewish nation and the Muslim countries. Now, I had the opportunity to revisit the data and looked at the data in 2016, and I have published it now to look at whether there has been any change in the pattern of suicide, and there has been. Now, the highest number of suicide is not in the so-called atheist countries, but in Hindu countries and Buddhist. Actually, Buddhist countries first, followed by Hindu countries, then atheist countries, then Protestant, then Catholics, and of course, the Islamic countries still remains the same. But having said that, what is it in religion? Is it just being religious or belonging to a religion which is protective? Or it is the social network that religion provides which protects you against suicide? Or it's not even religion, but a kind of a spiritual belief which protects against suicide is still a matter of debate. And there have been recent researches on individual religiosity or spirituality and found out. So some of the studies recently have looked at the population-based studies which have looked at suicide and religiosity have found that countries which are probably more tolerant to suicidal behavior had higher suicide rates, the religious countries which had. Now, the question of whether the religion is equally protective for men or women, that's another question. So recently, as I said, I did the data on all the countries of the world and based on religion and thing. And what we found is in the fall of the so-called atheist countries to the number 2 position from the number 1 position is because there has been a substantial reduction in female suicides in their area, both in China and in the former republics of the USSR. The female suicides had come down drastically, And so the so-called atheist countries, the suicide rates has come down. Whereas if you look at the Hindu countries and the Buddhist countries, the rates have come down marginally for women. So they have remained number 2 and number 3 as it is. And it's the same for the Protestant and Catholic countries. When it comes to Islamic countries, what we find is the reduction is not so much for females. Compared to 2000 to 2012, that is after 15 years, the reduction of female suicides in Islamic countries is much less when compared to the other countries. So this is the broad criteria. But having said that, some newer research has come out which has shown that psychological autopsy studies have shown that just before a person dies by suicide, there has, in the last 3 months, there has been probably a shift in their religiosity or even shift in their religious affiliation. That is, in the last 3 months before suicide, people who have been quite religious have stopped being religious, or people who did not believe in God became hyper-religious. The other thing also is, in the last 3 months, people have shifted religion from Hinduism to Christianity, or Christianity to Muslim, or so some kind of an emotional trauma, and they're searching for some divine help, and probably, we don't know. But in the last 3 months before suicide, there is more shifting of religion or faith, which happens. So what is important, I would like to say, is that it is extremely important to study this, what we know as a protective factor, where very little has been done, and we need further research. And not only further research, we also need to know what is the mechanism by which the religion provides. Is it the network which provides the support? It is a simple belief in that particular religion, or in the simple belief in the supernatural power which guides us. So what is the constituent of this religiosity or spirituality which protects people and sometimes does not protect other people? That's my opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lakshmi, for your presentation. So for now, we are going to introduce Reverend Dr. Noel Holder. He is online. Dr. Holder, can you unmute?
Good morning.
I will just introduce you. Reverend Dr. Noel Holder is a mentor, a coach, and a teacher and televangelist, producer, and host of the Ebenezer Praise Time Ministry, which is available on TV, Facebook, and YouTube. He's the current director for School of Nursing, College of Medical Sciences, University of Guyana, former head of public health, and former moderator of Guyana Congregational Union. He's passionate about adolescent health and well-being, including teenage pregnancy and their second chances. Dr. Holder, may you expound on your experience with your congregation, your religious community, and your thoughts on mitigating the risk of suicide. Thank you.
Saying good morning to everyone. I was saying that I'm happy to be part of this wonderful conference that takes in a cross-section of people from different parts of the world. And also, it is a timely intervention in allowing the religious bodies to have a say into what is happening as it relates to mental health issues, and more particularly suicide. What do we know? What do we know about it? Well, we have lots of ways in which we can gather information. And we just heard research presentation. Last 2 days, we heard several other research presentations dealing with mental health issues and dealing with also suicide. For Guyana, suicide in itself, and there was research to support, was more in those areas that where agriculture was at its highest. Easy access to some of the things that can cause destruction were one or two of the important areas that contribute, because access to these sources that can destroy an individual was one of the area that was thought of as easy access. Now, the person in the church setting, whether it's the Reformed church or the Pentecostal church, many of them, and like the research would have shown, you will hardly see that extent of depression on them. And so that is what we know, that you had to do more probing. If someone becomes withdrawn, they can be withdrawn for several reasons. And you wouldn't want to think that while being in the church, that they would want to contemplate suicide, since the teachings does not accommodate such level of thinking. The basic component of education that takes place within religious settings is the development of values and norms, and that is why I made that statement. So the depression can be for a different reason and not necessarily one that is contemplating suicide. So we know that. The research on suicide, several research would have shown that many of the causes are unknown, but it is something internal that builds up over time that causes the person to say, I don't want to live anymore, I want to die, etc. All of those jargons that we know. The norms mirror the tenets of faith, and most significantly, the pro-social behaviors. The goal is to create an environment that promotes the nurturing of faith and its practice, offering samples of community building. So that's what the church does. It helps to build community. It gives the level of support. It helps the internalizing of the norms and the values and the purposes from the outset. And so all of these areas have been researched, and people have been making different comments on how and why and the methodology in allowing for this internalization. The community setting allows the person to feel welcome, because we understand that mental health or mental illness, we understand that pretty well. That concept of mental illness, awareness needs to be integrated. But much more than that, we understand that it is important that we seek to understand those who are within our congregation, to have a one-on-one, and to observe even the slightest deviation in this happiness, in this happy mood, the slightest deviation. And so people often look at mental illness as, they say, it's madness. In the last presentation, I looked at it as some in a spiritual scenario, evil spirits, and there is healing for those spirits that mimic that type of behavior. So it is imperative that the church are called to look at values and norms and internalization of the beliefs and the hope of the resurrection. And there are several scriptures that we can quote in terms of, if we want to practice, what are some of the practices that we can do to help to alleviate it. The overarching practices to lead people to Christ, where they can be free, restoring back the hope and giving them something to live for. But however, you need to know what is happening, and many times it is hard to know. One of the scriptures that I want to put here talk about here is John 14:26. It says, but the helper, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, he will teach you all things and bring you to remembrance all things that I have said to you. So the internalization, this greater hope of the resurrection, this greater hope of life after death, those are some of the key overarching preventative measures or practices that the religious body can employ to help the person who is slipping into that deep depression and to that mental illness. I hope I have able to say something to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reverend Noel Holder. You touch on a lot of really great points, specifically talking about access to resources. Up next, we will have Reverend Dr. Ronald Paul Garrell to speak more about the Christian perspective. He is the chairman of the Interreligious Organization, and I will pass the mic to him.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. This is a very important topic from the point of view that not only people who are non-religious, not only religious people are able to develop themselves and live a good life, but also the non-religious and the religious. What I want to say is that I want to give you an example. In my office, there are always people turning up with all kinds of issues, or, almost every type of problem people turn up. And I realize that people come because they're looking for a solution. So each person's situation is unique. I can tell you why. One day I was stepping out of office. I was about to go out, and as I hit the door, someone bumps into me. It was a young man, came in to me and said he walked in because he saw the door open. That's why he came in. So I asked him what was his problem. He had half a sack on his back, and inside of that, he had the chemicals and stuff that he was going to use on taking life. So as I told him to sit down, and then he explained that he was on his way to destroy the life of his children's mother and 2 children. He was going to get rid of 3 persons, then take his own life. But because he came in that door, he felt now relieved to speak. But while I was talking to him, I keep running a prayer inside, asking the Almighty God that we all serve, what should I tell this young man? Eventually, the inspiration came to me to tell him that what he is planning to do, it's unfair to the lady and the children, and also to what he's planning to do will not solve the problem. I said, what you're planning to do will create a much bigger problem. You might not be able to see it right now, but later on, it's going to become a reality if you do what you're planning to do. And so we sat down and we spoke. And as we talked, the environment all of a sudden changed and got better. And he started to listen. And I was feeling happy inside because the lives of 4 persons are being taken care of. So eventually I spoke with him for quite a while. And after time, he decided against it, no longer to take people's lives and his own life. But the point is that I was going out. I had to forget about what I was going to do. and spend my time now talking to him. But in the end, I felt happy for staying back. But still, even although when he felt calmed down and now had no longer had a desire to take lives, I still check the news every day because I took down his information, where he's living and so on. I keep checking to see, if in that area, if anybody committed any crime of that nature, and it didn't. So, and if you can bear with me, I had a recent one just 2 months ago. I went to a wedding reception, and I was introduced to a very vivacious young lady. I was introduced to, and she looked full of life, all excited, and she was the host of this event. Eventually, just about 2 weeks ago, she died. She took her own life. I was so surprised because when I met her just about a month ago, and she was like one of the happiest person I know on earth. I wondered what could have happened in that period of time to make this well-educated, having a good job, be so effervescent in her expressions, and she took her life. I wish if I could have had a chance to speak at her at the time or just before that time, and she made that decision to take her own life. I wish if I had the opportunity. So what the conclusion I've come to is that anytime people turn up, I would not be thinking that because they look vivacious and full of life, that everything is okay. Maybe that's covering up, right? From a religious perspective, we are asked to love the Creator with all our heart, mind, body, and soul. And when you finish doing that, you love your neighbor as you love yourself. If we are to follow that guidance, then I think that you would see a reduction in our rate of suicide. So it first starts with the element of being able to love the Creator and then to love yourself. Because if you truly love yourself, then you will not want to. Do you want to destroy anything that you love? No. When you love something, you want the best for it. And so my outlook towards this life is that as people come, my desire must always be to see how I could move them on to a higher level and just don't feel that everything is okay because of them having a vivacious attitude. But we need to look under that. So just like the young man, when I told him, I said, what you're planning to do will not solve the problem. What you're doing is creating a bigger problem. And I think that really shocked him. So this is my approach, because all of us have been created here for a purpose to fulfill the ideal of goodness. So we should not want to destroy ourselves or destroy others. So we need to take a step back and look at the wider perspective. The various countries, why it is they have a specific amount of suicide rate. Some is higher, some is lower. But for those that has a higher rate, we need to find out exactly what's happening. Because I feel that people need guidance. When we give them the kind of guidance that they need, then they could make ideal decisions. So I am usually a happy person when I find I can help people. So with all those people out there who have their problems, we have to look at how we can help guide them in the right direction. So we are living in a crucial time, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. So it is our time. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you again, Reverend Dr. Garrell, for sharing your story and your insights. This is very important. We should also remember to look for subtle signs and just be there for your friends. And just to remember that this is a very serious matter. Imam, Tasdeeq, to give a Muslim perspective, he is the president of the Al Mustafa Islamic Trust and the board directors of the Guyana Interfaith Religious TV and executive member of the Interreligious Organization. Thank you.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Good morning, everybody. Assalamu alaikum to our Muslim brothers and sisters. I thank Sister Christina and her team for organizing this conference here in Guyana. And I think it is the first of its kind. And we hope that we don't stop here. And I think it's just the beginning to start many more things. And also, I appreciate the presentation of our Professor Lakshmi Vijay Kumar, and she is from our Madras, our neighborhood. I'm from Bangalore, India. And let me introduce myself that after my studies in India, I studied in Islamic Republic of Iran, and I did my Islamic culture and Islamic science and specialization in Quranic science. I don't have PhD degree in particular topic, but many PhDs and professors, they sought help from me, and some of them, they were able to receive it. And credit goes to the teachings of Islam, not myself. The question is very important. What do we know about religion and suicide? And I think even 10% of it we don't know about both the topics. The unknown concerning both the topics is more than what is known. So we have to work harder to find out what is unknown and hidden from us, so we make it known so we can resolve this topic. Unfortunately, I have to say here that we paid more attention to physical aspects of mental health and well-being and suicide and other related topics than the spiritual aspect of it. While the spiritual aspect is more and effective in finding the facts and resolving and finding the solution as well. I hope that the brothers and sisters in medical line and related to them, they're doing well, but I think we religious bodies and social workers and intellectuals should come on board and do better things, because we can solve many more of these problems. Of course, we need the collaboration with the medical professionals, social workers, government agencies, NGOs, and the spiritual and religious leaders. Without the cooperation with each other, I don't think we can find the final solution. What I want to mention about Islam, and based on data collected by efforts, the minimum rate, the low rate in the Islamic communities. And I want to shed light on why it is so. The question has been asked, and I think it is good time to answer this question. First and foremost thing, the teachings of Islam is so powerful, and dealing with the issue from the basic roots, giving this impression to the followers that your existence is not belongs to yourself. Your body, your existence is not yours. It is given to you as a trust by your creator. So you don't have right to harm your body, and let alone the committing suicide. And also you are responsible to keep up your body safe and sound. And there are many instructions concerning keeping up our body. as well as we have to take care of the spirituality, and which is the need of the every human being. That's how a human being is distinct from other creation. Animals and other creation have similar in terms of body, and some of them are more stronger in capability of physical aspects compared to humans. But human are distinct, are preferred because of our intellect, because of our spirituality, and that power we possessed by our Creator. And also, it is mentioned in many verses of the Quran and hundreds of ahadiths concerning the upkeeping of our body, and also there is incentives in both ways. If you do this, this is a reward for you. And also some warning, if you don't do this or do this, there is a punishment. So that gives a motivation that, oh, if I go through with this, so I may get this much of a reward, both in this world as well as in hereafter. And then if I do this wrong, I may get punished both in this world and in hereafter. So that conscious, it is repeatedly. So we have the mechanism of daily prayers, 5 times prayer. It's like Islam consider our body and soul as a rechargeable battery. So as you are getting weak, you need to go back and charge it. And every week we have the Jummah prayer. So Imam in the Jummah prayer, how much they are practicing, that's a different issue. But this is one of the obligations for the Imam of the Jummah sermon, that he need to shed light both on the spirituality as well as the social affairs of this particular society. If they are not doing this, they are not dealing with these issues, it means they are not fulfilling their responsibility. Normally, the Imams, based on their capacity, they deal with both the issues. The first sermon is concerning about spirituality and reminding them their duty is concerning both their body as well as their soul. And then the second sermon is dealing with the social issues, and that is also, it is directly affecting the relations between their family members and the society. And that itself, the gathering itself, so the professor was pointing on that one of the reasons why Muslim community have reduction in the committing suicide, that their bond with each other is so strong that every day it is encouraged that you can pray at home, you can pray individually, but it is highly rewarded if you go pray in the masjid, congregational, with other brothers and sisters. While they go and they meet each other and they, somehow they get help from Imam and the intellectuals and the body who are there and their fellow brothers and sisters. And that itself, and especially the Jummah prayer, we have the large gathering there. And normally people after the Jummah, they sit and they discuss and they try to solve each other's problems. So I don't want to go through the Quranic verses and these things, and just to save the time, I go through with what I intend to mention here. The one more thing is what is obligation in Islam is having prejudice and jealous and looking on others' lifestyle is strictly prohibited in Islam. What is encouraged is you look on what you have and don't look on what others have. That itself mitigates the problem of the majority of the problems we see, that they see neighbors, they see their colleagues, they see their partner, their other social members. They are enjoying so many facilities and they are not. And eventually they try, but they are not getting through, they commit suicide. And especially because of the words they hear from their neighbors and maybe the relatives that, look, that your neighbor is having so much things, why you are not having this? And that gives a built up, as our brother mentioned, it's not the people commit suicide in one day. So they built up many things during the years and years, and then finally they come to this conclusion. Sometimes the being panic or being stressed or being anger, which is strictly prohibited in Islam, creates the promotes this mindset to commit the suicide. For example, let me give one very easy to understand example. If a child is there, we want that child to pick the pen which is there in front of him and give it to us. There are two ways. One way is, please pick up the pen and hand over to me. They can go easily and identify the pen and bring it back to us. There is other way. Bring that pen. If we mention this, the child may see the pen, but he may not recognize it because of the being panicked. So it is just example for a child. We deal with our lives in such a way in a daily basis. That's why in Islam suggests, do not make any suggestion while you are angry. Do not make any suggestion or decision while you are stressed. And it is encouraged that while you are standing, if you are angry, sit down or take a cup of water. So to reduce your anger, then you make a decision. Even there is Islamic law that if a husband pronounced divorce while he is angry, that divorce is not valid because it is pronounced while he was in anger. So these are the incentives promoting the Muslim society not to think of committing suicide. Despite of so much of encourage of life in hereafter and bliss and favors we can get after that. We normally, this verse is very famous in the mouth of the Muslims that inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. If someone passed away, the first thing we say, we came from God and we have to return back to Allah. We return back to God. So we don't hesitate the death. Despite of having this, the encouragement, the bliss and favors we receive after death, we don't commit suicide because it is not belongs to ourselves, and we are encouraged to keep up our body and discouraged to harm our body. And that is more stronger point. Let me give one example of one of our brothers in our society. I saw around 6 or 7 members who are disorder, dysfunction mentally in our society, but none of them committed suicide so far. Alhamdulillah. One of the members, how we dealt with, he had some, based on the doctor, the nervous breakdown. Whenever he was financially stressed, he used to behave differently. And he got married. And then what happened, one day we saw his misbehavior with his wife, and also coming to our society doing weird things. And we identified that this is a problem. We took him to the hospital and gave the medications. What we observed, so here the role of spiritual leaders and religious leaders is so important. That I want to point out here. The wife brought the food for him. He was not taking the food. The doctor said, you have to take the medicine after food. So how we can deal with this issue? So I went there by carrying food from myself, and I gave the food, and he took the food and he ate easily without any hesitation. Then I asked the question, why you not eat the food from your wife? He said, no, I don't trust her. She may make something. So what the important here is to deal with the patient, to deal with person who is having such mindset, you need to gain the trust first. Without gaining the trust, you may not deal with that issue. So the religious leaders, they can do much more things. And even he was not taking the medication from his wife. So what I did, I brought that person to my center and I took care for 2 days. I fed him well, and after medication, he was mentioning things what he had in his mind. But after 2 days, he was just like normal person. So the religious bodies, religious leaders, they can do a lot more than their family members because the people trust them more than their own relatives and friends. So maybe later on, the points which I noted down here, if I find time, I will mention there. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak out.
Thank you so much, Imam. And thank you so much for your presentation and sharing the Muslim perspective. To transition to the Hindu perspective. So I'm going to introduce Mr. Deodat Myrtle Tilak. He is a regional counselor, a Hindu priest pandit in Tamil and Vedic theology. He also has a Bachelor's of Science degree in clinical psychology. He works as a life coach, guidance counselor. Can you speak on the Hindu perspective on suicide and mitigating the risk of suicide in your religious community? Thank you.
Pleasant good morning to all those who are present here. Protocol already established. My friends all coming from a Hindu background and speaking in my capacity as a Hindu priest. I can tell you here, Pastor Magaral would have mentioned and Maulana Sahib would have mentioned. And you see, religion has a role to play in the wellness and well-being of our society. While we do act, religion also can be used as the institution that helps us to alleviate ourselves from the oppression. For example, I come to you, I'm feeling down today, so I come to you for a boost of confidence. So I turn to my religious leader for a boost of confidence. When I return back to the stressful situation and I need another booster, now what happens? So what happens there are the non-specific factors that are involved, whereby you're providing a space for the person to share. So as a Hindu priest and coming from a psychological setting, people do approach me because for one reason or the other, they see the level of open and agreeableness. So when they come to me, I don't speak to them as a Hindu priest. I speak to them based on their needs. And when I say I don't speak to them as a Hindu priest, because when they come, I ain't got time to indoctrinate anybody or pontificate on anything. I want to hear what is it. I follow a routine, a systematic approach whereby I will go through that to establish what exactly is it with you, etc., etc. I guess you get the point. But on the topic of suicide, when I speak about suicide, I speak from conviction. And I speak not only from a theoretical perspective, but from a practical perspective. Because you're looking at a person who would have attempted suicide on several occasions. Even as a Hindu priest, I would have attempted suicide on several occasions. So when I speak about suicide, I don't speak about it from a clinical perspective. I speak about it from a personal perspective.
Thank you all, and we will transition to the end of the session.